Here? Upstairs. Up, yeah.
Oh, so was you. I didn't know. So they get 2 feet in there.
Can you swim? Can you swim?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mother.
Thank you. Hi there.
Fine, out of the way. Come here. Stand. Come out of the way, darling.
Get the feeling here. Rain, yeah? That's all right then.
Has hot drinks, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, some soft drinks and snacks. So if there's anything that you'd like when we're out on the water, please just do ask. Lomond Special, which is a dram of whiskey in your coffee or a rum or brandy in the hot chocolate. And just as we're leaving the pier, a very short safety announcement. On the roof of the vessel here, either side of the wheelhouse, we have 2 self-inflating life rafts, capable of carrying up to 95 passengers. And should we need them, under the seats downstairs, we have enough life jackets for everyone on board. In the very unlikely event of an incident, please just keep a close eye on Sheila and myself, because we'll be the first 2 out over the side. And the only other crew member to introduce is Piper, the ship's the little Scotty dog. She's actually the captain, she's in charge. So we're going to be out on the water for about an hour this afternoon. We're going to sail out over to the eastern shore, and then we're going to head north up to... So Loch Lomond is 22.6 miles long, and up here in the north, the more fjord-like end, most of the loch is about a mile wide. Down in the south, it stretches out to over 5.5 miles wide. So with a surface area of just over 27 square miles, Loch Lomond is the largest expanse of fresh water in mainland Great Britain. At its deepest point, which we will cross shortly, the loch is 623 feet deep, making it the 3rd deepest loch in Scotland, after Loch Ness and Loch Moray. And Loch Moray up in the north of Scotland is over 1,000 feet deep. But just to give you some idea how deep 623 feet is, we could go to the deepest part of the loch, which as I say we will cross shortly. You could drop in the Blackpool Tower, stand Big Ben on top of it, and it still wouldn't break the surface. The deepest part of Loch Lomond is deeper than the deepest part of the North Sea. Very fortunate to be surrounded by wildlife on Loch Lomond. In the hills around the loch and on the larger islands we have deer. We have red deer, roe deer and fallow deer. The deer are very good swimmers and they move around between the islands. So most of the larger islands on Loch Lomond have deer on them. On an afternoon like today, your best chance of seeing deer is up on the skyline. They're very well camouflaged against the hillside, but we often get stags standing on the tops of the hills surveying the surrounds, or small herds of deer crossing over the hills. And silhouetted against the sky, as I say, is promise. And recently reintroduced in the last 3 or 4 years, we have beaver on the loch again. In the skies above Loch Lomond, we have birds of prey. We have golden eagles, sea eagles, buzzards and ospreys. And the osprey is a real success story for Scotland in terms of conservation. It had been hunted to extinction 150 years ago, but it was reintroduced in the late 1950s, and there are now close to 300 breeding pairs returning to Scotland every year. The osprey is a bird that mates for life, although in the winter the male and female live apart separately over in North Africa. And about Easter time, the male bird flies over first, followed about 2 weeks later by the female. Once they arrive, they will return to the same nesting site that they use every year, and we have pairs of osprey on Loch Lomond that have been using the same nests for well over 10 years now. And once they nest, they will have usually one, very occasionally 2 eggs. And then over the course of the summer, they will raise their young in the loch. They spot the fish close to the surface, they then dive down. They don't usually go into the water, and osprey's feathers aren't waterproof, and if they went into the loch they would get waterlogged and drown. But they fly very close to the surface and then literally reach into the water with their talons and pluck the fish straight from the loch. And if we have any keen anglers on board, you might like to know the largest salmon caught on Loch Lomond weighed 54 pounds, and the largest fish to come out of the loch was a pike, which weighed 74 pounds and was over 7 feet long, and he's now in a museum in Glasgow. So we're going to head over to the eastern shore of Loch Lomond, and the eastern shore is very much the quieter side these days, but that wasn't always the case. Long before the road was built that goes all the way up and down the western shore of the loch, and that's the road over on our left hand side. The road was built 300 years ago by the English Redcoat Army when they needed to move troops and supplies quickly into the Highlands. But before that road existed, the eastern shore of Loch Lomond was actually the busy side. And that's because back then, most people got around in Scotland by walking. The terrain in the Highlands isn't very friendly for horse riding. It's either very rocky or very boggy. So most people were on foot. And if you're walking, you want to take the most direct route that involves the least amount of climbing. And if you follow the water's edge, you avoid any climbing. But the eastern shore of Loch Lomond is actually very much straighter than the western shore. If we were to send 2 people off to walk up Loch Lomond from the bottom to the top, one up the eastern shore, one up the western shore, the one walking up the western shore would walk well over 1.5 times further than the one going up the east. So the eastern shore was the main route, north and south into the Highlands. And it became a cattle drover's trail. Cattle drovers would take their cattle into the Highlands, fatten them on the rich grazing of the Highland slopes, then they would drive their cattle down this eastern shore of Loch Lomond, and this cattle drover's trail has now become part of a very famous walk we have here in Scotland called the West Highland Way. The West Highland Way starts just north of Glasgow in a little place called Mulgai. Then the path comes over the hills to Loch Lomond, goes all the way up the eastern shore of the loch, and then on through the Great Glen. And there are hotels, campsites and bothies, and less than a third actually complete the walk. Around 40,000 people each year complete the West Highland Way. And now each year we also have one of those crazy man runs where people run the length of the West Highland Way, and they complete the 96 miles in less than 24 hours. So we're just crossing the deepest part of Loch Lomond just now. That's 623 feet of water beneath you. So we're heading just a few feet above the water's edge. You should be able to see a little white cottage. That cottage is Culness Cottage, and Culness Cottage was built in the 16th century as a gamekeeper's lodge. And a gamekeeper would live in that cottage, and he would tend the wildlife and game in the hills so that the local landowner, the Duke of Montrose, and his guests could hunt in the hills. And a gamekeeper lived in that cottage right the way up until 1960. He lived there alone, with no vehicle access, No running water, no power, no gas, no phone, no TV, no Wi-Fi, no girlfriend, no wife, and no mother-in-law. Apparently, he was a very happy man, but no one knows why. The cottage is now a holiday home, but they're not lonely because their front door actually opens onto that walking trail I was telling you about, the West Highland Way. So every year they get about 150,000 people wandering past their front door. Not surprisingly, as such a large body of fresh water, Loch Lomond is used as a reservoir. Our nearest city is Glasgow, but the water from Loch Reservoir for Edinburgh. Glasgow gets its water from another loch a little bit east of us called Loch Catrin. They built a distillery at the centre of the island, then dug a quarter-mile long canal to connect the distillery with the loch. Then all the ingredients for making whiskey were taken over to the island.